Welcome, everyone. My name is Fernando Parra, and I have the great privilege of being an associate professor of accountancy and director of the Institute for Family Business here at the Crest School of Business. I'm joined by my co-authors, Dr. Monique Bell, associate professor of marketing and logistics, Delia Chulakian, instructor and part of the wonderful team that takes care of all the student experiences here at our school, and our former colleague, Dr. Keith Story, who is now an instructor at Mississippi State University. So I'm really motivated and passionate about family businesses. I actually was raised as a member of a family that had a small business. And I think all of the lessons that I have that have shaped me as an individual come from that time and how I interact with my community members. I think those lessons of working with my parents on the weekends and every day after school, going to our restaurant and being a cashier at the age of 10 years old and doing the accounting when I was 14 and fighting with my sisters again over some of the expenses that were being done as a bookkeeper for the family business and challenging some of the decisions for my family can be multiplied and extrapolated to some of the experiences that family businesses go through nowadays. With this in mind, we wanted to explore what was the state of affairs of our family businesses here in the Central Valley. So we did that by doing a survey. So let me walk you through that. And you may ask, why family businesses? What's so important about family businesses? So the Central Valley's economy really thrives because of the strength of our family businesses. You take a look at these statistics nationally. 75% of the new jobs that are created by family businesses all across the U.S. Employment in family business accounts for 60% of all employment. And if you look at the GDP, 54% of our GDP is made up by enterprises that are family owned. So if we translate that, we can look at over 24 million family businesses across the U.S. About a quarter of our businesses in California alone are family owned. We have an estimated number of 18,000 plus family owned businesses here alone in the Central Valley. And as one of the top agricultural counties in the U.S., we can say that from the 4,000 farms that we have in the Central Valley, more than 90% are family owned. Now, this is important because as you look at family business across our community, you see those individuals or the members of those family businesses participate very rigidly and very extensively in our community, from nonprofit organizations to your schools, to your places of worship, religious institutions, you name it, government, etc. And so they make up a majority of the fabric that we are today. And if you talk to any family business member, they'll tell you, as the research suggests, that family businesses are not just operated by profit, right? They look at other non-financial benefits when they operate their family business. What does that look like? Well, it includes the feeling of pride and identity. People that are part of a family business, they interact with the community knowing that they represent not just themselves and the family and the legacy they bring, but also the business that they operate as well, and vice versa. But when you're interacting as a business owner, you're not just thinking of the business that's is there to make money, but it's also representing a history of years and years of work, especially if you have multiple generations that have brought you to this point. You don't want to let your ancestors down as you make this decision. So that preservation of that shared history and the legacy is important as you make those decisions, strategic decisions, in the way you actually manage a family business. So that's really important as a motivator. So we wanted to know what the motivators were here in the Central Valley, and we also wanted to know what the challenges are, because as you can tell, family businesses can also be complicated, right? Because you're extending your sibling, your daughter, your son, your parents, who we don't always agree with. Now imagine extended family, your in-laws, your spouses. Anybody have a family business here? What do you think are some of the complications that come from that?
Relationships sometimes get hard.
It does, right? We blur the lines. So not only you're fighting about the business, or maybe you may have differences of opinion, I'm gonna phrase it that way. And so absolutely. Anybody else? Rob?
Yeah, that it puts, it puts you in the uncomfortable position of hierarchy, let's say, within the family. That not all decision making is equal.
Not everything is equal, right? So you want to be equitable, you want to be an ethical leader as well, but then that sometimes puts conflict in the decision-making process. And you may have a really talented person that should be in this particular role, who is not necessarily somebody you like the most as one of the family members, right? And so you have, preferential treatment, so you have conflict regarding the governance of the company, the strategy that you're going to take as you approach new challenges, new generations that come in and have new ideas as to how and what values the company should have. You also have compensation issues. Why are they making more money than I am? You have people that are early risers. Some work in the afternoon, some work all night. And, they don't get to say what they get compensated for. So compensation issues can be a great issue. And the roles they play. Who should be the boss? Who are you going to give this business to if you were to unfortunately pass away to? So all of those decisions are constantly creating an additional level of dynamics in your family. So your typical family dinners are not just family dinners, but they also involve some of the shop talk that you bring forth. So we wanted to do this so we conducted a study of over 172 family businesses, not just in the Central Valley, but also in the US. We relied on the Institute for Family Business. For those of you that are not acquainted with our center here at the Craig School of Business, the IFB is a resource center that provides seminars and educational resources for family businesses so we can overcome some of the unique issues that are faced by these enterprises. We also have a connection with students so that you can connect with the next generation of family business leaders. The membership of our IFB tends to be two types of businesses, either businesses that are growing and businesses that need the assistance and the guidance and the lessons that other people can share, and those that are very successful multi-generational businesses that are here to share that experience so that everybody else can do well. So they are, in a sense, paying it forward. So we have that duality in our membership. We also got other family businesses in the US to participate. And before and after the survey, we actually conducted focus groups. First, to understand how to phrase the language, so that's all technical jargon for academics. And then after the survey, we wanted to have a deeper context and understand the challenges and the way that we could serve as an institution at Fresno State. So from the 172 respondents, you can see that most of them were either chief officers or senior executives responding to our survey. All of them had good knowledge of the family business and their strategies. One of the things that I found interesting is that the participation followed what we expect in terms of family business and their longevity. You see that we have a lot of new businesses or businesses that have been in existence for less than 24 years. And as you move throughout the ages, you see that participation diminishing. And that actually reflects the population, right? So it is really hard to stay in business from generation to generation. In fact, we also asked them, which generation controls a family business? And you still have the first generation controlling most of the family business that we surveyed. And then you have a drop down as you go through ages. You see a big jump. In fact, not every family business is able to pass down their business. That's a big filter, if you will. We call it the big filter. It takes a lot to plan to make sure you have the right person to succeed you. The succession planning is important. Sometimes children don't want to participate in that business. One of the things that I found interesting here in the Central Valley is that we had a low participation of second generation controlled family businesses. And interestingly, I'm going to jump ahead to the deeper context. Some of that reasoning that came from the conversations we had with our focus groups or other conversations that we had in the IFB unrelated to this research that say, I'm not ready to let it go. We're not ready to pass it on. I don't know if I can trust my children to work the same way that I did. They have different values. They need a little more. They need to mature a little more. So we're not ready to let go yet. But that is more apparent here in the Central Valley than everywhere else in the US. And sometimes others would say, well, I don't want to impose that burden on my children. If I want my children to be able to dream big and do whatever they want. So I work hard, I'm creating this business, but I could sell it at the end and have an exit strategy, maybe sell it to my extended family, such as, your employees that could buy the company from you. Or you could have a management agency that could take care of the business and let your children have a passive income that way. So there is that as well. There's other factors that could complicate things. Now, sometimes we want to make sure that our children go out and get other professions and then come back to the family business later, and they can bring that knowledge from other places. Maybe they want to be accountants or data analytics people or all business, right? And engineering, of course. So there was some, but you can see that there's a huge drop from generation to generation. Not everybody gets to pass it on, and that's going to be one of our contexts of our discussions. In terms of industry participating in our survey, you see that the majority of our participation came from agricultural-related industries, either, bless you, either trade, transportation, public services, accountants, lawyers, security and stuff. You see a lot of family business that retains these businesses, their natural family business as well. Agriculture, have farms that have been in existence, and they have been passed down from generation to generation. In fact, some of them have been here for more than 200 years. And here are the results. If you recall, socio-emotional wealth were all the non-financial benefits that family businesses gain from operating a family business. And we can split this up into three main concepts. The first one I want to talk about is the renewal of family bonds through succession. That refers to making sure that your family business is creating a lasting family legacy. It involves passing on the values, making sure that you have all the beliefs and traditions instilled in your generations that are going to follow. But it also means that you're planning. You're actively planning to make sure that your next generations are going to get there. Then you have the dimension of emotional attachment of family members, which refers to that positive family self-concept and the ability to handle business with rationality. You're not letting some of those issues that arise from family disputes come to the business. So you make sure that you are committed to a good attachment, a good positive attachment in your business. And then finally, one of the most important ones is the identification of family members with the firm. In a sense, you become one and the same. You're not acting as an individual alone. When you act as the child of a family business owner, you're also representing that family business. So your actions will reflect on not just your parents or your children, your siblings, cousins. It's just also going to be reflective on your family business. So you've got to make strategic decisions that reflect that. We can see that from the results. We're pretty similar to the US, the rest of the US. So that was comforting, except for one point, right? We have this slight difference in our succession planning. Again, it comes from the fact, and you saw that on the participation as well, as second generation versus first. So people are still committed through the renewal of family bonds, but there is a lack of knowledge, and this is coming from the deeper context, on when is the time to trigger that succession. So when we ask, they're not ready to actually tell us, yeah, I'm ready to pass it down, or I have a plan in place. They're still thinking, among some of the comments I saw, well, I'm making my children compete for it, right? I want to make sure that they all, treat me well, and then we'll find out. We'll figure that out later. Kind of like the Succession series on HBO, if you are familiar with that. So we also asked our family businesses, what are the challenges? Again, the challenges can come from that interaction with family members that also participate in the business, but you're also subject to external forces. So we were expecting to have atypical or additional factors that would influence those challenges in family businesses. This is what we have. Surprisingly, or maybe not as surprising, the majority of the challenges that were cited as the top challenges for family businesses in our region were navigating the complexity of their industry, complying with regulations and legal mandates, operating and managing the business, as opposed to the US, which are centered right here in managing time and operating and managing a business. That was really interesting. And the article will break it down by, income levels. One of the things that I was pleased to know is that some of these factors that are actually in the minds of other US family businesses were not as relevant in our region, such as facing discrimination, for example. That was not a factor, and that we should be proud of that. Let's think about the deeper context of what was going on as we were rising from the pandemic, 2021, 2022. We had quite a bit of regulatory changes that were coming down. Not only do we have mandates on how we would manage our business, when we could open, how many people we can let in as we were coming in or coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, but labor laws were tightening. You had new minimum wage requirements. We had slight rising inflation at the time, and then faster as we went forward, particularly in the labor market. Right? So at that time, we experienced a lot of people either retiring or exiting the job market, particularly as women, because they had to work with children in their homes. As we were closing all the schools and we were coming back, some of the previous employees decided not to participate in the workforce for a while. And that meant that we had to compensate those individuals that were available a little more so we could attract them to their family businesses. There was a huge, one of the things that was faced at the time was also regulations that were coming in. Regulations regarding, the use of certain plastics, et cetera. So there's, accounting regulations such as independent contractors that were not allowed to be independent contractors anymore. So there were quite a bit of changes that were happening at the time. In terms of challenges, though, what we got from our focus groups and our discussions was that the workforce reductions, we saw this, by the way, we had conversations with family business owners who were devastated and got very emotional during our interviews to explain how difficult it was to let go of some of their family members, some of their extended family members as well, right? Employees that had been with them for a long time and they had to let them go during the pandemic. And that it was really hard for them to get them back. In fact, they couldn't get them back because now they had to pay a lot more. And now they were competing with everyone else, desperately looking for people. And so that reduction in workforce led to also a difficult time for them. Their time spent in the business was a lot more. So the responsibilities kept going up and the workforce was shrinking. So that meant that the work-life balance for family members was certainly affected. This also affected family dynamics. Because now you're working more, so you're not at home anymore. And it was really challenging for everyone along. And so we asked, as you saw, one of the third challenge that was cited was that ability to operate the business. And we thought, well, you've been doing this for a long time. Why is it so hard for you guys to operate? Well, it was all about the workforce and the ability to manage your family and the business at the same time. They also had issues understanding and finding that middle ground on remote work environment setups. They had some intergenerational conflict that they had to deal with. And once again, trusting the next generation. Some of the comments were, our children working as hard as we did? Some recommendations came across as well. Our participants said, from the lessons that we learned, you should get on the succession planning as soon as possible. So talk to your lawyers, talk to your estate planners. Make sure that you're accounting for any unforeseen events, such as the death of a family member, a divorce. Make sure you have your seller agreements in place. Making sure that the family can keep that legacy ahead of time. So all of that needs to be well planned. They also mentioned that you should foster those core values, make sure that the siblings, your children, your nephews and nieces that were involved in the family business understood what the family business stood for. And that was a challenge for them, and they wanted to make sure that every family business should be dedicating addressing this as well. Another recommendation was to make sure that you develop new generations, and again, the preservation of the legacy of the family was a common theme. So what we saw during the 2022 years, we had a lot of challenges in our economic environment, yet we see that the socio-emotional wealth is exactly what proved successful for family business, because this long-term vision of sustainability and resilience is exactly what drove some of these family businesses across the line. You know, they're not thinking of what is the bottom line anymore, but what is the legacy? And a lot of the sacrifices that were made, the extra time, the extra investment, not giving up on the family business, was all about the legacy that we're leaving behind. And it's exactly this resilience and this social-emotional wealth that makes our Central Valley such a vibrant place. It's because of that social-emotional wealth that family businesses are intertwined with us and continue to make this Central Valley such a great place to live. And that is what I have to share with you today. Thank you.
All right, so connections, technology connections and how that might lead to employee monitoring, and of course, geographical and transportation connections and the future for our community, as well as those family connections in business. These are designed to be conversation starters. And so our next phase is to return to the Gottschalk's Gallery. And please ask your questions from our amazing speakers. I'd also like to give a shout out to Jaguar Bennett, who is our production manager for the lovely magazine. And thank you to our editorial team, including Dr. Antonio Avalos and Dr. David Vera. So this is a labor of love, and we appreciate you being here. Really appreciate these amazing talks today. Thank you so much. And please enjoy some food and drink and the opportunity to connect with one another. Thank you.